Unlock the high returns of the expanding venture capital world right here on the Emerging Managers Podcast.
Well, I'm really excited to have Jenna Aronson from Two Bear Capital on the podcast. And, it's really interesting to have someone from Montana on the podcast, of all places, number
one. You're
one.
getting all the states in.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to do the 50 states in 50 days podcast here. But she is like on the leading edge of technology and extending the quality and the length of life. And she comes to this as a neuroscientist, which, again, my state college brain was almost exploding while I was talking to her because she knows this stuff so well. She knows about genetics. She knows about aging because that's where she got her training, from Harvard to Mass General. She understands this sector, inherently and explicitly. And so it was really exciting to listen to what she's doing with the leading edge technology, focusing on life sciences. And, we've got some pretty interesting things to learn from her.
Yeah, this whole area of the brain has been fascinating me for a really long time. When I used to write my ink column, which is how you and I met, right? And so when I used to write my ink column, they would say, can you write anything about the brain? If you write about the brain, people will click it. And so it fascinates everyone. But I feel like I don't know anything either. It's such a broad area. But super aging is in the news right now. This idea of how we're going to age and how we're going to, overcome all these diseases and age gracefully and age with a high quality of life. And so she's really onto something here. I look forward to everyone hearing this and having comments back. I'd love to see your comments on social about this.
Well, let's have a listen. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Scott Kelly, the founder and CEO of Black Dog Venture Partners and your host for the Emerging Managers Podcast. And I'm excited to have Jenna Aronson from Two Bear Capital. Welcome to the show, Jenna.
Thank you so much, Scott. Great to be here.
So, Jen, before we get into Two Bear, share a little bit of background on yourself prior to starting the fund.
Yeah. So background is I trained as a neuroscientist, spent over a decade in academia, did my PhD at MIT in Dr. Ed Boyden's lab in the McGovern Institute for Brain Research within the Brain and Cognitive Sciences department. I was working on developing platform technology to get nanoscale resolution insight into different types of clinical samples, brain tissue slices, liquid biopsies, so that we could understand more about neurodegenerative disease processes and also, get better insight into glioblastoma and other types of brain cancers. I also spent a number of years in research at Mass General in Dr. Rudy Tanzi's lab, where we were building 3D human neural stem cell models of Alzheimer's disease. There are a lot of challenges with the mouse models, and so we were making more complex models with actual human cells so that we could study over months at a time and understand, what were the contributing factors and, what drugs might be helpful for, the enormous number of patients, who are searching for hope. So,
wow, that's pretty impressive background. It doesn't look like you come to venture from a traditional channel. So maybe share a little bit about Two Bear, but first of all, why the name Two Bear? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, sure. So, I became interested in the biotech innovation ecosystem because I loved the intellectual exploration and there's enormous unmet need in the freedom of academia. However, I wanted to get closer to patient impact. And I saw getting into biotech industry as a way to getting closer to bringing real cures to patients. And so in my time at MIT, I took a lot of coursework over at Sloan at the business school and really went on a journey of education and exposure to folks in the ecosystem to understand where I might slot in and really kind of make a difference. And as I learned about opportunities, the role of investor in the biotech ecosystem, especially at the early stage, is really critical. In order to bring these innovations that so many folks are working on in the lab out into new companies that can really progress forward and push new therapies forward, there needs to be investors. And those investors need to have deep scientific insight and in order to understand the innovations that are being worked on. These approaches are early and they're risky. And so it's important to have technically savvy folks with deep sector expertise. And that's where I realized I could make a difference in helping drive investment decisions. So I got connected with Two Bear Capital during my time in my PhD and became very excited because they had a differentiated approach. There are a lot of folks right now who are a little concerned about capital efficiency, and so because of that, they choose to go after developing a single program or a single asset. And while that can work, at Two Bear we take a different approach. What we get excited by is a platform approach. And what a platform means is that you don't have a binary risk profile. You can work on a couple of different programs, all of which have the potential to move the needle for human health. And that creates not just a diversified risk profile, but also additional optionality. Some of those programs, a small biotech can carry forward and run the clinical trials themselves. And, some of them might be a really good fit for partnering. When you think about the range of different indications out there, the time and costs of running, for example, an Alzheimer's study is enormous. That's something where you really want to, partner up with pharma. And if that's the only thing you're working on, then, you kind of might sell the company without being fully bought. So it's good to have a couple of things cooking. And that's really kind of the Two Bear Capital approach.
That's awesome. So when you obviously get in early, are there, in terms of the types of companies and the types of founders, maybe share a little bit of flavor on the entrepreneurs you're backing?
Yeah, absolutely. In, early stage company development, the founders are so important. I mean, there are so many factors that need to come together to have the right mix of, potential to really succeed, because it's hard and the failure rate is high. Right. And so what we really like are deeply technical founders. Deeply technical founders who understand the space that they're working in and can make good strategic decisions. And we work with them, and our approach is to be helpful and hands-on. We've led or co-led all of our investments. We support our companies through board seats. We've got operating partners who can be helpful. The CEOs we work with, they've got our phone numbers. I'm always happy to get late night texts and calls, first call, something good, something bad. You just need to chat. We're right here. And really, we like to find founders who not just have that deep technical expertise, but also have the ability to think critically about, the business side of it as well. And it's hard to come in with all of those strengths. And so what we like to see is somebody who has a combination of leadership potential, who can really help drive a team, motivate a team, and interact with all sorts of different personalities, but also has their ears open and knows that they might not know everything and wants to have, input from different perspectives so that, good conversations and decisions can ensue. So it's really nice to find that balance of somebody who's a tremendous leader, but also has a little bit of that meta awareness and wants to be better every day. Somebody who's a sponge, who's just trying to always improve and recognizes that, biotech is a team sport and we need to all lean in to have the best odds of success.
So you mentioned a little bit ago about capital efficiency. So maybe you could share how technology is impacting that capital efficiency. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about AI. We did a previous podcast interview where they were doing research in space. So maybe talk about how technology is playing in to your investment thesis and how that's making, the capital more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a question of the moment. And, every time I get this question, I wonder, when is it going to be that, the AI is so commoditized we don't even ask the question? Like, for example, let's pop up a level. Do we ask people, is electricity part of, your innovation? No, we don't. But if it was the early 20th century, we would, right? Because it's like, electricity is going to transform, transportation or productivity or making shoes or whatever it might be. So in the same way, all joking aside, AI offers tremendous benefits for improved efficiency and streamlining processes, and we firmly embrace it. We think it should be a part of basically every company, but we're not investing in AI first companies. It's more that this is part of the approach. This enables the approach. I mean, even internally, we have all sorts of AI tools that, that we use to boost our own productivity. And so there's a lot of different examples of how AI is being used amongst our portfolio. There are some folks who are using AI algorithms in combination with the most cutting edge biomedical data sets in order to pick indications or pick targets. And then, they're feeding the output of those in silico experiments into the first experiments into cells to see if that checks out. And then there are other companies who are using AI algorithms in order to optimize the molecules that might become a drug. So they might, take a look at the drug they're starting with and say, hey, I wish that we could tweak a couple of these factors so that it gets the brain and crosses the blood-brain barrier with a little more efficiency, or actually gets them metabolized a little bit faster than we'd like. Let's see if we can, improve upon the stability. And, traditionally with medicinal chemists, they follow kind of well-trodden pathways and follow the precedents. But with AI, you can explore a lot of different avenues and get out into some novel space efficiently. And then on the productivity side, we see some of our portfolio companies who are using it in order to prepare high quality materials that will set them up for success with pharma partners. The bar is very high for the data sets that these companies need to deliver, and especially for first-time founders who haven't navigated a partnership with a pharma company. The level of detail and rigor that needs to go into how they prepare and format their materials, it can be eye-opening for them. And so helping them understand, what they need to get to in order to be able to communicate the potential of their programs and why they should be attractive, for partnerships, that can come from really having sophisticated and organized materials. So, and then of course, internal communication and everything else that you might have. I could go on and on.
No, I appreciate that. So let's talk about some of your portfolio companies. Maybe share some of the companies that have been that you would deem as a success story, and also talk about some of the things that are really that you're excited about in your portfolio currently, new discoveries and things of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. So our first investment out of Venture Fund 2 is a company I'm really excited about. I first met the founder at a conference in New York. He was coming off of an acquisition of his former company by AbbVie. That was a PINK1 activator for Parkinson's disease. And we were chatting neuroscientist to neuroscientist. And here's, kind of where the deep technical expertise and background comes in. We were speaking the same language. And he said, hey, let me tell you about this new stealth thing that I'm working on. And it happened to be in a space that I had already been tracking and following, which is in the area of getting drugs into the brain. And there are a lot of different ways that people are working on getting drugs into the brain. You might have heard of brain shuttles, which help get a little bit more drug into the brain. But you still have some drugs circulating out in the rest of the body. And something that I'd been really thinking about and that this founder was working on is, how do we address the problem that there are targets that exist on cells in the brain and we want to hit those, but those targets actually exist in cells in the rest of the body as well. And so if there's any drug that is still circulating out in the body outside of the brain, you're going to hit those targets outside of the brain and you're going to get toxicity. You're going to get side effects. And there are a lot of programs that have stopped, not because the drug didn't work, but because you've got these toxicity issues from the drug interacting in the rest of the body. And these folks had come up with a clever approach, which is a chemistry-based platform that allows to have a universal peripheral blocker. So this blocker stays outside of the brain, cannot cross the blood-brain barrier, and preferentially interacts in the rest of the body. So then the drug is free to get into the brain where it can go and get activated by its partner and do its job. And the really cool thing about it is that you're not just limited to one disease. You can use this approach for everything from epilepsy to neurodegeneration to, even neuro-oncology. So there's just so many opportunities. And also, the risk profile is better. You can go and use drugs. There are FDA approved drugs that some doctors refuse to give, even though they might, stop children from having seizures. The side effect profiles are so intense and so prevalent that some clinicians will refuse to use them. So we can go back and leverage the work that has previously been done and put it on this platform and really make a big difference. So we co-led that investment and with a few other great investors, and they've just been tremendously efficient in moving forward. They are moving into their IND enabling studies now with their lead program, and they're looking to be heading into the clinic in early 2026. So really efficient progress. And you asked about founders. Well, this comes back to the founder. He's done it before. He's navigated partnerships and acquisitions. He's a tremendous leader. So a lot of the folks at his previous company came with him, so they were able to hit the ground running. He's very savvy and capital efficient. Everything that comes across this desk that gets negotiated, and it's tough to be on the other side. He does a good job. So that company is Montara Therapeutics, and they're based out in the San Francisco Bay Area. We're very excited about them.
Yeah, that's fascinating because, the other day I was watching a drug commercial and it always dawned on me, they talk really fast about all the things that could go wrong and all the side effects. Yeah. And it's really intriguing that you can now, the drug delivery system can make these drugs more effective and less, have less, negative effects. So that's really fascinating. So what are some of the new frontiers that you're looking at right now? What are some of the things that are on your radar?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Two Bear Capital, we really like platform approaches with therapeutics. And the areas that we tend to focus on the most heavily as a team are oncology, CNS, and I&I. In the CNS space, I told you about this delivery and getting drugs into the brain. It's really a central problem. And so Montara fits in there nicely, but there's still a lot of white space. And so we've been looking very closely at a number of different approaches to get drug into the brain through, different shuttles and new mechanisms. Another area that's very interesting is the neuropsych space. So there have been improvements in clinical trial design and strategy in order to reduce some of the challenges that are unique to that space, like the placebo effects, like inclusion bias for patients and participants in clinical studies. So there are systems where the folks who aren't actually on site at the clinical trial center, they're not the ones empowered to make the decisions. You have an unbiased third party that's actually looking through. And the reason why is because if you actually look at, the numbers in some of these studies, you'll see that a lot of folks just barely make it over the threshold. And, there are a whole bunch and there's like a white space a little bit below. And you realize that the folks at these clinical trial centers are incentivized to enroll. They've got pressure to get the patients in. They've got pressure to push forward. And it's really important to run the best study you can. And so having external raters who don't have that pressure on them can help you less biased decisions on who gets included. Then you get better trial outcomes. And in the same way with clinical trial design, there are really clever new approaches where you hear there's a placebo group and then there's a drug group. Well, now what they do is they actually run those groups and then they re-randomize. And what you can see is that there are certain folks who are higher placebo responders, and you can actually use biostatistics in order to, reduce the impact that those placebo responders are having on your study outcomes. Additionally, we're getting better biomarker data for neuropsych indications. It's been, very challenging in the past. And in the past, we've seen that we've got kind of these messy drugs. We don't know exactly how they work, but they seem to do. Now we're trying to be a lot more thoughtful and strategic and say, we want the drug to bind exactly where we want it, nowhere else. And so there's a PET, positron emission tomography, that's being used as a way to see target engagement of a drug with the target that we want it to be acting on. And so we can actually use advanced imaging techniques to see if that's happening in early stage clinical trials. Also, quantitative EEG and MEG. There's all these other strategies to see, are we, doing something that seems like it's maybe helpful and also not harmful in those early studies. And that's, traditionally not been something that's available to us. So it's an interesting space. We're looking at it. Lots of opportunity there.
It's really encouraging to have an investor that knows her space so well. I would imagine if I was on a due diligence call with a biotech, I would not be able to answer all the questions that you put in front of me. So I really appreciate your expertise. So let's talk about investors. Potential. Let's talk about the makeup of investors in Two Bear Capital and investment partners. What's that makeup look like? Who are these people?
Yeah, absolutely. And popping up a level, I've been talking a lot about kind of the biotech investment thesis that we have at Two Bear Capital, but I want to make it clear we're actually both a tech and a life sciences investment firm. So we have big practice on the tech side. On the tech side, we're also deeply technical. So we, the areas that we're really interested in and have expertise in, cybersecurity, information security, networking, DevOps, been building out a new thesis in quantum software.
Well,
if you look around our investment team, so back to your question, if you look around the investment team, all of our backgrounds reflect those areas. So we're, really deep, and we've got folks who can ask, really deep questions and have their pulse on kind of the latest in those space, both so that we make good investment decisions and are, excellent stewards to the best of our abilities for our LP's capital, but also so that we can be helpful to our founders and our operator, because they've got so much going on, and the needs of driving their companies forward is so much that if we can be an extra pair of eyes and ears and set them up with warm intros, potential customers, potential partners, investors, then that's how we can really be beneficial. And that's part of our thesis, is to invest in companies where we can be supportive beyond simply the financial capital that we're putting in there. We want to make sure that we can do more than that, because if not, why are we a differentiated?
Yeah, right. Agreed. So the LPs, current LPs in Two Bear Capital, who are they? I mean, not by name, but maybe by profession and background.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a great group of LPs at Two Bear Capital. It's a mix of high net worth individuals, family offices, institutional money. And the way that I would describe our investors is very intelligent, sophisticated, successful individuals and families, know a lot and would really love to be exposed to some areas that aren't necessarily exactly within their core area of expertise. So perhaps, to not get into specifics, but, we've got family offices who have substantial holdings in the real estate sector, maybe transportation, maybe other, types of family businesses that are, enormously successful. I want a little bit of exposure to some alternatives. And within that strategy, VCPE comes in, and they are interested in Two Bear Capital because they know that we're going to run a really deep diligence process, and then very helpful with our companies. So we've got kind of a 20-80 rule, where 20% of it is, picking the right company, 80% is rolling up our sleeves and helping with good decision making afterwards. So our founding partner, Mike Gogan, he was a very successful partner at Sequoia for a couple of decades. Multiple trips to the Midas list, and too many successful exits to enumerate here. Having been on over 100 boards, he's a tremendous mentor and leader, and we've been building up the firm and learning from his background, and really kind of sticking to these tenets that we agree are so important, which is technically deep investor team who invest in really deep founders. And then as we grow and as the teams grow, if those founders aren't, the right people to be in the CEO role, we still keep them close and we find the right people to support and make sure that we've got the technical expertise paired with the right experience in the business space in order to help these companies reach their full potential. And and we don't invest in companies unless we see an exit that could be really meaningful to our LPs. There are a lot of different opportunities out there and we can't help everybody, but we're looking for, not iterative solutions, but big transformative answers that could, just be tremendously impactful on the world.
Okay. So for potential new LPs in Two Bear Capital, why your fund? Why now?
Yeah, excellent question. So potential LPs should be excited about what Two Bear Capital is building here in Fund 2. And I should add, we're actively fundraising right now because what we're doing is very carefully selecting companies where we see the right mix of the technical innovation that's impactful, a team that can drive it forward, and economics that can bring nice returns to our LPs. And we think about everything from a platform approach, which means that there's not going to be a binary risk flip, which says, you were wrong, and this is not going to have a good outcome. We've got optionality to strategic about how to push forward with solutions. And so because of that, we're mitigating risk and being wise and prudent and also disciplined stewards of our LP's capital. And our approach is different. A lot of investors right now are scared about the macroeconomic climate. And so they're pushing towards these binary, investment bets. And while those might take a little less money to get to an outcome, that's all they've got. It's one shot on goal.
Right.
And if you look back at, kind of history and what's worked, it's not the single shot on goal that's going to work every time. That's great if you want a portfolio that's going to have, sort of the traditional statistics of one big winner, maybe like 2 or 3 base hits, and then a bunch that are going to goose eggs.
Right. Exactly.
Our approach, yeah, exactly. So our approach to there is we want to help most of our companies succeed. We see potential for most of them to succeed. And we see that there's going to be ways that we can help continue to support them. Even if they hit a little bit of a bump in the road or the roadblock, we're going to be the partner to help them there. We're also going to be, the wanted partners because we build such trusted relationships with us. They want to take our input and they want us to be partners in that journey. And because we're empowered to do that, we can help find solutions. And something that really separated, Mike from some of his colleagues and throughout his career is that other folks were ready to sort of hang up the boots when things got a little tricky. And that would lean in and roll up his sleeves.
Yep.
And there are so many examples of when he was able to, pull out a really big win when other people were like, oh, no, let's move on to the next one. And so that patience and that dedication, figuring out what the path forward is, even when you hit the roadblocks, that's something that we bring to, to Two Bear Capital. And the why now? Well, that's because we're always on the pulse of what's changing and what's new. Right. And we know what the latest innovations are in the space that we're working with. And, we're dialed in and we're on the pulse of it all.
That's it. Any final thoughts you want to share with our listeners today?
Yeah. So another thing that separates Two Bear Capital is that we have both tech and life sciences expertise in the team, and we're commingled into one fund, which means that, we all lean in because, the thesis is really biotech and tech are coming together. Tech is enabling biotech in ways that have, never previously been possible. They're accelerating the speed of discovery and the efficiency that we get there. And so rather than siloing, our practices into different categories, we see enormous value in keeping those together. And so we have both the folks asking the deep technical questions as well as very intelligent individuals who might not be subject matter experts who ask, sort of big picture questions. And so we're thinking about it from all the different perspectives. And we've also been very thoughtful about our team construction. In addition to the deep academic expertise, we've also got folks who come from Wall Street, who bring the public market expertise. So even as we're investing early in these seed and Series A companies, we've got, the big picture perspective on, a few steps down the line, and we're thinking strategically.
Fantastic. Where can the listeners learn more about Two Bear Capital and then connect with you?
Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn. And also we're at twobearcapital.com. There's a form on the website that you can use if you want to fill it out. But I encourage anybody who's listening to this, who's excited about what we're working on, to reach out to me. My email is my name, Jenna, at twobearcapital.com, all one word. I'd certainly love to hear you, because we really like to partner with intelligent LPs who are excited to work with a really serious and technical team with business savvy, because we can be your diligence engine. We can help you, make good investment decisions. And, we're always looking to build that network of Two Bear Capital LPs and, change the world together.
Fantastic. Well, everyone listening today, make sure you follow Jenna on LinkedIn and reach out to her at twobearcapital.com, and make sure you like, comment, and share this podcast. And Jenna, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you so much.
Well, it was really interesting to learn more about how to get older more gracefully and more successfully. And, she has this great platform approach that she applies. Two Bear Capital has a lot of focus on, life sciences, but they're also in cybersecurity, information security, and quantum software. So she's in the bleeding edge of several different technologies that are going to be transformative to our society and the way we live, and quite frankly, how long we live. So it was really interesting.
I think she's really right to be on the edge of all that technology, because these science breakthroughs aren't going to happen without the technology breakthroughs as well. Like, the two things have to go hand in hand. But, this is an area that Tom, my partner and husband, and I watch very carefully. He had two family members with Alzheimer's. Like, it's a very big area, this idea of, your brain and aging, your neuroscience and aging, just like what starts to decline. But these memory issues and degeneration that starts to come with aging really is surprising at how quickly it happens when you hit over 50, and how many people surrounding you, and oncology and cancer issues, like all of those things are creeping up at a much faster pace. And you just obviously notice it more as you hit to be a certain age. But, you're more aware of it. But I am really glad to see that combination with the technology, because that starts to bring that awareness earlier.
Well, the great thing she does, she brings in like these deeply technical founders who really know their space. And, and they bring along their technical, support and their training and background. So it's a real, hands-on approach to supporting these companies, because, and we had this bit of a conversation, is that you got these very good technical founders who really understand the craft of their technology, but need help running a business and growing a business. And it's not only do the folks, Erin and her team at Two Bear, have this background in the sciences, but they have background in running a company. Because at the end of the day, these types of companies take a long time to develop.
They do,
and definitely need the support of people that understand the technology, but understand how to practically turn this technology into a profitable company.
Well, and are in it for the long haul, right? Like, not the short, flashy gain, because that's not going to happen in this sector.
Right. Absolutely.
But the returns. Gosh, just look at how our aging population, just look at how big those returns could be. And that's fascinating.
Absolutely.
All right. I'm sure you've got some more sectors. I love that you're getting into these deeply technical ones too. Like, you've like we had medical science in space, like all of this stuff. These are just all fascinating. So if you haven't caught up with some of the interesting sectors that we've been covering here on Emerging Managers, you've got to go to emergingmanagerspodcast.com. Go check out all the podcasts, go check out all the blogs for those podcasts, connect up with the companies and the amazing investment founders we've been talking to here on Emerging Managers Podcast. And Scott, you will be back next week. We will have more and more sectors being covered. Absolutely. And more investors being covered.
Many more to come.
Join Scott Kelly, Tracy Hazard, and their high-performing capital fund manager guests next week on the Emerging Managers Podcast. Don't miss our upcoming virtual and live VC Fast Pitch and podcast events. For more details, background on our guests, or an application to be our next guest, visit emergingmanagerspodcast.com. Don't miss out on shaping the future of venture capital and entrepreneurship with us by joining our robust community of innovators and investors today.